Maybe we'll give it a couple more seconds and then we'll go ahead and get started. Perfect. Let's get started. We have a decent amount of content to get through. So welcome to the Building Movement Project's Building Blocks for Change, or BB4C, monthly information session. Thanks for being here. We can swing to the next slide. We'll kick it off with introductions from our team and invite you to introduce yourselves in the chat. I think we have pretty low attendance at the moment, but I imagine folks will start coming in. I'll introduce myself and I'll hand it over to my colleague Cameron. I'm Mercedes Brown. I'm Building Movement Project's Director of Race Equity Assessment. I use she, her pronouns. I'm located in the state of Michigan, and I will hand it off to my colleague Cameron.
Thanks, Mercedes. Hi, folks. My name is Cameron Snell. I am the Race Equity Assessment Associate here at BMP. I support Mercedes in developing and scaling the BB4C assessment process, as well as serving as the first point of contact for those interested in participating in BB4C.
Perfect. And I would invite you all to drop the similar information to the chat. So just as a reminder, that's your name, your preferred pronouns, if it's helpful, your location and your role. It does help us to get a feel for who you are. And you'll have another opportunity to respond to a few poll questions too that'll give us some more insights around who is joining us virtually. We can swing to the next slide. Let's kick it off with an overview of how we plan to use the information session. The first thing I'll touch on is the information session logistics. This webinar, we are using the webinar platform of Zoom, is being recorded. So if you didn't hear the announcement, it was made before you joined. It's recorded and it will be made available to you all following the information session, and made available on our website to others who are interested in the assessment but are unable to be here with us. A couple of other things I'd like to encourage you to think about and or do throughout the session is to interact with our team. And you can interact with us in a number of ways. Even though we're using the webinar function of the Zoom platform, you can and will be asked to respond to poll questions. In fact, as soon as I get done talking, we'll launch into a series of polls. I also encourage you to use the chat function to interact with one another as well as our team. But the last thing I want to encourage you to use is the Q&A feature. So use the Q&A feature throughout the webinar should you have questions for my colleague and I, rather than the chat. This will better enable us to track and respond to your questions without them getting lost in the general comments that end up getting added to the chat function. So you can, just as a reminder, submit questions anonymously should that be of interest to you. I encourage you to ask questions throughout the session, but you should know that we will be saving time towards the end for questions and answers. And so we may be keeping track of them as they come in. We may choose to respond to them throughout the session, but encourage you to ask all the questions you need to better understand the race equity assessment. The other thing I'll touch on before we swing into a series of polls is what we plan to cover, the meat of the information session. So during the webinar, we will provide an overview of the BB4C, or Building Blocks for Change Race Equity Assessment. That'll include lifting up the framework, as well as a live BB4C user dashboard demonstration. My colleague Cameron will hop in and cover that on our behalf. Again, we'll have questions and answers, and then we'll wrap up and make sure that you know how to contact us should you have more questions and or interest in the race equity assessment. Let's swing into the polls to get us started. The very first poll, Cameron, if you would not mind launching that. Before we dive into the content, we're interested in understanding which of the role options do you most closely identify with. So if you would take a moment. Oh, actually, it looks like we had the wrong. Cameron, we're on the first one. It looks like race equity experience on my end. Maybe it's just off on my screen. See which poll is live.
Awesome. Is Let's see. Are you
Oh,
able to?
yeah, my end. It just the first one that shows up is race equity experience. I can't remember if we're launching them all three or individually. It may be just a little messed up on my end.
Individually, that one should.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
one that's
let's try this one now.
Yep, perfect. Sorry, folks. Thank you for the grace. The first question we like to ask is describe your role. I think we launched the second poll should be launched now. So describe your role. There's a number of options that you can choose from. That one is live now, whether or not, and it looks like we have some folks. We'll give it a couple more seconds. We only have one person who's responded. I know we have a really lean group, but we have two more. So if we can just get the rest of the responses in, we'll go ahead and close that poll. Okay, it looks like we're just shy of 3. Let's go ahead and close that, Cameron, in the interest of time. It does appear that we have, at least of the 2 of the 3 respondents, we have a DEI professional as well as a funder in the room. So thanks for joining us. Let's kick the next poll off and we can advance to the next slide as well. Thank you all for your patience. This is the poll where we love to get information about your experience with race equity. So if you would just take a couple seconds, we've got a small group, which is nice to respond. Pick the response that most aligns with your experience. That would be really helpful for my colleague and I. And we'll give it a couple more seconds and then we'll go ahead and close that one down. I will share that for the most part, 2 of the 3 responses already. So the majority of folks on the call support nonprofits in advancing racial equity strategies within their organization. So thank you for that, Cameron. We can go ahead and close that one and then launch the final poll. Thank you for your patience. I promise all of this information is helpful for Cameron and I as we move through the rest of the information session. This is the last question, really is where we try to get more information about your familiarity with the building blocks for change race equity assessment. So let's take a couple seconds and get this one answered. And I'm happy to report that all 3, I think we're the 3 participants, all 3 participants have completed the survey. We have 1 person not familiar with the assessment and the other 2 moderately familiar with the assessment, having maybe attended a webinar in the past or viewed a webinar recording. Thank you so much. Very helpful. So that's good to know. We don't have a lot of deep familiarity, which is great because we plan to in the time that we do have, certainly we are time constrained, but we will be able to provide an overview of the race equity assessment and make sure you know how you can engage with our team should you need more information and or be interested in signing up or using the assessment in your practice with nonprofits. Let's actually, without further ado, swing into the BB4C overview. I will say BB4C for short. That is the acronym that our team uses for your knowledge. Let's just state the obvious here in that BB4C, or Building Blocks for Change, is an automated race equity assessment process designed by the Building Movement Project team to help nonprofits and capacity builders and consultants supporting nonprofits develop the foundational capacities that we believe are necessary to foster more racially equitable and inclusive workplaces for their employees. And the way in which we go about doing that is we developed a framework which undergirds the assessment process all the way from the survey, which I'll talk about in a moment, through the report and recommendations, as well as the companion supports that we design. We developed this framework which aims to help nonprofits understand the types of changes they need to make in their organization to become more racially equitable by focusing on what we describe as the key drivers of organizational culture change. And those are learning, leadership, conversation, and voice. And we'll take a look at the next slide, which actually provides a visual breakdown of that assessment framework. So these levers or capacities we identified with the support of a national advisory committee made up of racial equity experts and folks who are either driving research and or doing work in the field to support nonprofits. We identified again, and you can see on the slide here, hopefully everyone is able to see the slide deck. When we say learning, we refer to the willingness of an organization to test new ideas and advance change. Leadership, we're really speaking to the importance of both senior leadership, engagement and support and championing of the types of cultural adjustments that organizations need to make in order to foster equity. Conversation here, we're talking about organizations having the muscle to engage in hard conversations about issues of racial inequity in order to advance more racial equity across the organization. And then lastly, as it relates to voice here, we're talking about the ability to lift up and amplify the voices of the broader staff, especially those who identify as Black and Indigenous people of color within the organization, who are systemically kept out of many key conversations and decisions within the organization. And so it's with that framework that we then take in responses from all of the employees through the survey phase, which I'll touch on in just a moment, and try to get a better understanding of the organization's both strengths as it relates to their current culture around racial equity, as well as where there's opportunity for growth. And we do that by better understanding this, what we call the focus areas. The focus areas allow us to hone in even further to understand everything from how motivated and interested the organization is as a whole at fostering a more racially inclusive and equitable workplace, all the way through understanding what are the ways in which the organization is demonstrating and living into that commitment and those values by standing up plans, processes, policies to help them embed in a more systemic capacity that commitment to advance equity. So this is the framework we like to cover in these information sessions, because it really is the framework that undergirds the entire BB4C race equity offering. We can swing to the next slide. This is a really good segue to start to think about this process that I'm alluding to. So our Building Blocks for Change race equity process involves three main stages, which culminate in, we hope, an organization standing up a real feedback mechanism for understanding how well the organization is doing as it relates to their the work that they've identified as necessary to shifting the culture in favor of and in service of racial equity and inclusion across the organization. So you can see we've identified those three phases in the middle that are bookended by work on the very front end, aimed to prepare the organization to undertake the race equity assessment process, all the way through to this ongoing implementation work where they're implementing the key steps and standing up that feedback loop in order to receive ongoing and regular insights from the staff around how the organization is doing. The first one, I'm going to swing into phase one. They're pretty straightforward. The organization is taking the race equity assessment. It takes roughly 30 minutes for staff to complete. It is administered through Alchemer, formerly Survey Gizmo. It's an online survey platform. In this phase, we want the organization excited, enthusiastic, and ready to administer the survey across the organization so they can receive at least 75%, if not more, staff engagement and participation on the survey. That takes organizations anywhere from 3 to 5 weeks, but it really does depend. Once organizations wrap that survey, they've gotten to hopefully 100% staff participation, that is would be quite the accomplishment. Organizations receive their report within about 2 weeks from our team. It's an automated reporting process. The analysis process is automated. We do data quality checks, and we share the report and its findings out to both the organization and a capacity builder or consultant, if a capacity builder or consultant is partnering with the organization. So those findings are shared out, and then we encourage organizations during phase two to engage in a series of meetings where they are engaging in meaningful dialogue and conversation around their report and findings. And that process really does depend because depending on the size of the organization, other priorities, it could take anywhere from a matter of weeks to a matter of months. Then following those that phase 2 and those discussions around the findings, organizations swing into phase 3 of the BB4C process, where they begin to assemble the team that's responsible for stewarding their ongoing race equity work, and that is the implementation team. What I did not cover on the very, very front end, which you can see depicted on the slide there, is that at the very outset of the process, organizations are assembling a first team, which is the assessment team, that's charged with helping them move through the assessment process. Fast forward to phase 3, they now have assembled this team that's charged with helping them to implement, develop and pull together that race equity strategy, or those series of strategies. So this team is largely made up of, and we're not prescriptive about its membership or composition, but we do encourage organizations to be really strategic and intentional about who gets identified to participate on the implementation team. But you certainly would see folks in senior leadership role. You would hopefully see a cross-section of the organization represented on the implementation team. And then finally, I mentioned at the outset that the organization would then swing into the ongoing implementation phase of the process. If we swing into the next slide, this gives you a sense of a couple of things that I touched on previously. That assessment team was the first team that I referenced. That is made up of at least 1 to 3 employees, could be more depending on the size of the organization. We have identified through our 3.5 years of beta testing and learning from organizations during the pilot phase that team is best if it has at least 3 folks on it. One person charged with navigating the sort of the administrative aspect or component of the BB4C process. So that's a process lead. Then we identified the other role of a champion. That's likely someone in leadership who has some sway within the organization, who can incite enthusiasm and excitement overall for the BB4C process. And then the last role that we identify and encourage organizations to fill this role is someone who would help facilitate meetings. There are a number of meetings I referenced them on the slide prior to this. And during those times, we encourage organizations to either identify someone on staff who is equipped with strong meeting facilitation skills, or to actually partner with a third-party facilitator, a consultant, or a race equity capacity builder to help them navigate those could be, very challenging conversations. This entire process we've seen through beta testing takes organizations anywhere from 6 to 9 months, but it really does vary depending on the organization's priorities, time of year, size of the organization. So it's really done at a pace that's set by the organization. And we've observed that it's taken organizations, or they devoted anywhere between 1 to 15 hours per week to support the process. That 15-hour in, so the higher end of that continuum, we've seen that more often when you're dealing with organizations who identified specific staff. So they have staff roles already within their organizational structure devoted to stewarding their race equity or DEI efforts. And more often than not, you see organizations not able to make that deep commitment. You could swing to the next slide. So I talked a bit about what the assessment, the framework, the overall process for the assessment. I do just want to make sure that folks on the call have a sense of what participating organizations receive through the BB4C process. So they receive access to the anonymized staff-wide survey, which has been pulled together and tested and validated by a third party. So we take that on. So we would equip organizations with that link so that they can distribute that survey. And then on the back end, once they've notified our team that they are ready to close their survey, they've gotten adequate staff engagement and participation, they receive that custom report, which we will share in the chat. a link to the report a little later. So there they will receive access to the customer report, as well as the opportunity to purchase additional disaggregated reports depending on their organizational eligibility. Larger organizations are likely to be eligible for more disaggregated findings by race and position because they just have a larger, more robust survey data set to work from. The very next thing organizations receive access to is these regular communication, their progress updates from our team at BMP, including helpful tips and reminders around how they might move through the process, engage staff if they're struggling to get the staff participation rate that they desire. That, those are the types of communications that they would receive. They'll also gain access to a dashboard, which my colleague Cameron will show you in a bit. These BB4C dashboard will house a robust library of digital materials and guidance that help organizations move through the BB4C process. There's also another dashboard, which I'll reference shortly, that's available to consultants that are working with organizations with similar access to resources. And then the last thing that organizations and consultants receive is access to technical or help desk where they can receive technical support by my colleague Cameron and I. So this is a great segue. Let's talk about the newest component of the Building Blocks for Change or BB4C process, which is BB4C Pro for consultants. So very early on, it became clear to our team that we needed to design a supplemental resource to support consultants and capacity builders who are leveraging BB4C with their nonprofit clients. So that's exactly what BB4C Pro for consultants is. It's designed to complement the race equity assessment process that I have with very broad brushstrokes just explained a moment ago. What that includes is access to a separate dashboard with supplemental digital tools and resources. An example of those could include interpretation guides, sample meeting agendas, cohort timelines, which I may end up discussing a bit in a moment, but there are a couple ways in which the assessment is designed to be used, and we've developed materials and resources to support the work of consultants who are using the BB4C assessment as part of their work with nonprofits. The other thing BB4C includes is access to technical assistance provided by our team. So I referenced that a moment ago for participating organizations, but we also provide that support to consultants as well. Also referenced this a moment ago, but I'll reiterate, is that consultants who are using BB4C assessment with their clients will also receive participation rate for their clients on a weekly basis as well. They'll receive access to BB4C training and onboarding support provided by the Building Movement Project team. And the very last thing that we're excited about is our team is going to work with our capacity builder colleagues and partners to develop peer learning and practice opportunities to learn more about their implementation of BB4C in the field, and to also uplift some of the sector level findings that Building Movement Project will be able to tease out as the data set grows, as more organizations utilize the Building Blocks for Change race equity assessment. We can shift to the next slide to give you a sense of how BB4C Pro for consultants can be used. So overall, the assessment was designed and tested. It was designed to be used in these two ways, and we tested it to really better understand that. One, this assessment can be used by individual organizations, so a single organization uses the assessment. And it also was designed and tested with the cohort model. And so I'll back up a moment and just hit on the individual organization. That will include for the consultants using BB4C Pro for consultants, tools and resources to support consultants as they engage with individual organizations that are using the assessment. So that's just to be really clear, because I know we have folks on the call who are utilizing who are engaged in race equity work with nonprofits. You would be able to use this assessment with a single client, or in the cohort situation, 2 or more clients. So the BB4C Pro consultant resource includes tools to support consultants in their engagement with 2 or more organizations who are going through a transformation process at the same time, and perhaps coming together for peer learning sessions. And that's an area where the Building Movement Project team actually has done a lot of beta testing and has experience both running cohorts as well as supporting cohorts utilizing the Building Blocks for Change Race Equity Assessment. So that hopefully will give you a feel for what the BB4C Pro for Consultants resource includes. But again, there's a lot more. Obviously, we're time constrained, but we encourage you, and I will share in the chat if I haven't already. I don't believe I have. I will drop into the chat the link to the webpage for consultants should you want to learn more about the assessment. I'll share that right now. Should you want to learn more about BB4C Pro for consultants, we encourage you to visit that page, as well as sign up for an individual meeting with my colleague Cameron and I. We can provide even more information. Let's shift gears now to a snapshot of the report. So I've talked about a lot, said a lot. Let me share with you now an overview of the report. And at this time, I am going to share a link to the custom report that I'm discussing that is available on the Building Blocks for Change website. Okay, that is the link that I just shared, should you be minding the chat. Let's cover these pages. So this is just a snapshot of that snapshot report that's available on the website. So that is not a full report. That is a snapshot that we designed at Building Movement Project to help organizations and other stakeholders who are interested in the assessment get a feel for what the report can offer. So this particular page is a cutaway in the report that comes towards the beginning of the report, intended to orient the organization to their it says results here, but their findings overall by capacity. Remember earlier I referenced those 4 capacities: learning, leadership, conversation, and voice. And so here organizations will see a high-level overview of where their organizations fall in respect to those 4 capacities. So they can see how respondents have responded to that survey overall in aggregate, and then we'll go deeper as we swing into the very next slide. We'll look at one of the capacity in particular, which is learning. So on the next slide, you can see this is a snapshot of a closer look of the learning results. So here the report delves into each capacity area in detail, with findings broken down across those 3 focus areas I mentioned earlier: motivation, how motivated are organizations, all the way through structures. How well does the organization, or how has the organization rather, demonstrated in a more systemic, ongoing way into their organizational practice and culture of that commitment to race equity. So this page also includes elements of each of those 3 focus areas where respondents feel the organization is the most and least developed based on their responses. So again, these are averages, average roll up. We use that same scale. So that scale shows it's really from where an organization, it covers the continuum, organizations that need to stop and take corrective action in an area, all the way through to the organization needs to sustain and deepen efforts because they really are on to something. Given how organizations survey respondents have responded to that survey in phase 1, the organization is really strong in the learning area. And you can see based on this example, this organization, not as much. This organization does need to ramp up their efforts in order to get to a point at which they are really strong in the learning capacity. What I will call out, though, as you can see on this page, the organization's motivation for demonstrating a willingness to learn and test new ideas in service of racial equity is pretty significant. They've got a strong handle on, like, they're demonstrating that commitment. They need to push through ahead. There's more progress. But as it relates to structures, the ways in which the organization has systemically integrated that commitment. That's where the organization in this example is falling a little short. And that's not too dissimilar from what we observe in practice with BB4C. We can actually swing to the next slide, which shows how we can further break down those responses where possible. So this page in the report is where we start to go one step further when the organization has enough of a diverse enough data set, rather, then we're able to gain insights into how different groups are experiencing race equity or the absence of that within the organization. And we provide some more context around why that's important. But here you can see we're pulling it up a level and looking across all four capacities. So learning like leadership, conversation, and voice. But we're doing that disaggregation, right? We're offering those disaggregated averages based on how individual survey respondents responded to the survey itself. So I'll give that a minute and then we can swing to the next slide. Thank you, Cameron. So here, this shows how we can break the responses down even further. And then I'll let you know that we can go even further than this page at this time. So here we're able to take it a step further and break responses down by race when possible. And then what we mean by that is that there must be at least 5 or more respondents identifying as belonging to an individual group in order for us to confidently break those responses down in a way that does not go against our commitment to respondent anonymity. So in this case, you can see that we were able to offer a breakdown by both race and ethnicity. And as of today, we're able to offer even more disaggregation. We're able to break down organizations' findings by race, ethnicity, as I mentioned already, but we're able to offer breakdowns by tenure, gender, role, or position as well, based on the types of questions that have come up as we beta tested over the last 3.5 years. Let's swing into the last couple slides within the report overview, which then shows the latter half of the report, which is where we start to offer, here's where we start to make recommendations about for where the organization can take those findings and shift to action. And so here you can see across all 4 of the focus areas, or excuse me, the capacities, we offer tips and resources to help the organizations make the most of their BB4C report findings and make meaningful changes within the organization to address the issues of inequity that have been identified through the report process, through helping the organization build up those 4 capacities, which again, we think are critical for the development of the organization, but are even more essential for creating a more inclusive and racially equitable culture, rather. The very last page of the report is just, again, another snapshot of what that might look like, broken down at the capacity level. So here we're able to go into more detail around how the organization might leverage a series of available resources that our team pulled together, because these are some of the best resources that are available to help them build the motivation around learning, practice, as well as structure. And one of the organizations will receive this for each of the 4 capacities. Okay, that was a lot. Said a lot very fast. Again, want to encourage folks to drop questions into the Q&A, use the Q&A feature to share questions with our team. Know that we will hold time for Q&A. And also we invite you to schedule a meeting to have a one-on-one with us should you have a lot of questions, because we're not able to go as far into depth as we would prefer. I am going to hand it over to my colleague Cameron, who is going to provide a BB4C dashboard demonstration.
Thanks, Mercedes. I will get our dashboard ready to go. And reshare that screen. Perfect, folks. So as Mercedes mentioned, one of the many offerings that come with BB4C is access to the BB4C dashboard, which Mercedes described as a digital library that comes with many helpful tips, materials, and tools for navigating the assessment process. So one of the first features that I like to highlight here is that the BB4C dashboard actually is password protected. So upon completing sign up, you can expect to receive an automated email from Squarespace that includes your BB4C dashboard credentials. So as you can see, once you're logged in, you'll see the general layout of the dashboard. Inclusions that Mercedes mentioned was access to technical assistance. That can be located here on the dashboard through this help desk button. The help desk is a short form that's internally monitored by myself and Mercedes, where your process lead or a consultant who's navigating the BB4C assessment process with an organization, this is where they can go to submit requests for support. So should they need to close their survey, should they have an issue finding their survey link or questions about the assessment process or materials, they are welcome to submit requests for assistance here. So back to the homepage of the dashboard. As I mentioned, the dashboard is full of helpful tips, tools, and reminders for navigating the assessment process. So as you'll see here, which I'll get into here in a minute, sort of the main attraction of the dashboard is going to be the materials. So what we offer in terms of support around those is guidance around understanding document titles, understanding the document type. So there's 4 types. There are handouts, there are fillable worksheets, there's resources and sample agendas. So understanding those document types, understanding who should use each document, and then understanding why they're ordered in the way they're ordered. We've got helpful reminders there. Something else that we like to offer, another piece of helpful information, should organizations have trouble locating their survey link once it's been distributed, we provide guidance on where and how to find that. Another element of the dashboard that I will highlight here is that the dashboard is actually phase-based. And what we mean by that is that you can see that the dashboard is broken out by the getting ready phase, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and ongoing implementation. So I will stay in getting ready, seeing as though that's where organizations will start. But I say this to say that you can expect to find similar support for each phase that you navigate. Again, here, there are some helpful tips specific to the phase. So in getting ready, one of the main tasks that you'll have to complete before moving to phase 1 is completing the organizational profile. So for example, we have a tip and a direct link to completing that there. Another cool element of the dashboard is that you can actually track interactively your progress as you prepare for and execute each phase, in addition to following up with your organization before progressing to the next phase. So that is very helpful. Again, I will highlight here that the materials were intentionally designed to support your organization through the assessment process. As Mercedes mentioned, BB4C was designed to be a self-guided process, meaning that we have really worked through suggestions and feedback from beta testers, but we've also just prepared helpful tips, tools, and materials that we know will help you all navigate. So as Mercedes mentioned, one of the key elements of the getting ready phase is assembling that assessment team. So as you can see here, we provide guidance on the multiple roles that folks will serve in on the assessment team. That team's made up of a champion who generates excitement around the process, a process lead who shepherds the BB4C assessment process at your organization, as well as facilitators who lead organizational meetings related to BB4C. For additional context here, we've got descriptions of each roles, estimated time commitments for each role, and then traits for success for each role. Another helpful tool in the getting ready phase here, I mentioned the organizational profile previously. Let's zoom in. Yeah, there we go. So the organizational profile is essentially an overview of your organization. So we're collecting information like your organization's name, how many staff work in your organization, when your organization was founded, just general information that help with our data collection. So this is designed to be completed by one person and take around 30 to 45 minutes. But as I've mentioned, there's a lot of information that goes into that. That's another survey on the survey platform, Alchemer. That's where you'll find the assessment survey. But we have created a worksheet, a fillable worksheet, where you can input your organization's information. That way, when it's time to go to Alchemer and fill out that organizational profile, you have all of the information that you need directly here. Unlike the dashboard, where this is interactive, you will need to save that fillable worksheet as a PDF. It will not store here. Not in this version of the dashboard yet. We are preparing for a version 2, but say that to make sure that no data is lost. Again, that's a lot of information to collect and lose. So don't forget to save those PDFs as you're transferring that information from the dashboard to Alchemer. So as you can see, there's lots of other helpful materials here, including how to decide on who should participate in the survey at your organization. We've got that link to the sample report that Mercedes shared earlier. And then sort of a connector or an explainer about how the framework and the survey are the relationship between the two of those. Again, each phase offers similar materials. Should you have questions that aren't answered by the dashboard or haven't been answered in an information session or a call with us, we do have phase-based FAQs that you can consult that focus specifically, these of course focus specifically on the getting ready phase. Should you have lingering questions that aren't answered by the FAQs or by us, don't forget that you do have access to that help desk where you can ask any question that comes up. Additionally, you'll see here that we have a video section. These videos were designed by our team and filmed by our team. They essentially provide similar support as the materials and the other tips and reminders that you'll find here on the dashboard, but in a visual and an auditory format. The last element that I will highlight here is that in each phase, your process lead will have an opportunity to submit reflection questions. So these reflection questions actually are helpful for both your organization as well as ours. So these offer an opportunity for you to adjust your practices as you're navigating the process to better serve your organization as you're moving through. It also is helpful for tracking best practices. If there's something that really works for your organization that you want to carry throughout the process, you are more than welcome and in fact encouraged to document that here, as well as documenting any challenges that may have come up throughout that phase that you can keep in mind as you're navigating the rest of the process. So that's how it's helpful to you all. How it's helpful to us is that it really helps us determine where you are in the BB4C process, and that helps us tailor our support, the support that we provide your organization as you're navigating. So again, it's very helpful for both parties, and we found that organizations really benefit from filling out those reflection questions as they navigate each phase. So that is the BB4C dashboard at a glance. I will kick it back to Mercedes and we'll do some Q&A.
Perfect. Thank you, Cameron. Thank you for that. And just a reminder, folks, I know we talk more from the organization's perspective, and I know we have no one on the call, I don't believe, who is an organization. So just remember that is the way in which nonprofits who are participating with the BB4C assessment process would interact with the BB4C assessment dashboard. We covered a lot. Cameron and I covered a lot. There were a few questions that came into the Q&A. I encourage you to send more. We also have so few people. It's a smaller group. We offer these monthly, so folks are able to drop in and should they have interest. We have 2 folks on the line. We're happy to allow you actually to talk should you have a question that you want to share, or we invite you to use the Q&A to submit questions to Cameron and I. So we'll give it a minute. If you're interested in coming off mute, if you have a question, because there's so few of you, again, just let me know. Flag it in the chat. I'm not sure if you can raise your hand, but then I am able to allow you to talk should you have any questions for our team. Perfect. Thank you. Yes, thank you for that comment around the consultants resource. New resource that we hope will position consultants to make the most of the assessment prior to releasing the Pro for Consultants resource on October 19th. Consultants were using it, but now we hope these additional materials and resources will help them even more. Right, let's see. Okay, yes, we will bring you off mute. You should be able to talk now. You'll just have to take yourself off mute.
Okay. All right. I see my little green microphone. Okay. So thanks for this. I really appreciate you all coming on with these monthly webinars. I try to catch them as often as I can. I think I've maybe been to 3.
Okay.
One time, and we're supposed to follow up at some point. I'm also a PhD student, so it has been insane for me. But a part of one of my social marketing campaign projects is to get nonprofits in Illinois to adopt a race equity assessment. I kind of expanded that a little bit. I've been toying with the idea of race equity impact assessment. And so maybe it's starting with this piece first, and then we could talk about what social impact reporting would look like on the back end. But I appreciate that there's a tool out there, something that I can point people to, and that they're going to feel comfortable that it's been beta tested, it's been tried, it's been validated. So I'm kind of excited. So now I'm moving to a phase to start looking for funding to see how I can afford it. I am a one-stop shop. I started my LLC in 2020. And so it's me as the founder and principal consultant. And so I am telling you now, I am going to purchase and get involved a little bit more closely in time, and I will need a lot of support. So that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining the mini webinars that you have joined, and don't hesitate to reach out to our team should you benefit from a one-on-one with Cameron and I. Would be more than happy. And also we can talk more about the pricing. Hopefully you'll find the pricing is designed to it's not designed to be cost prohibitive. It's designed to be as accessible as possible, while also encouraging organizations to put some skin in the game around their commitment. So we look forward to staying in contact with you and what important work you're doing. Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? We're happy to give folks the time back, but definitely want to hold space to see. Cameron, thank you. I know you've been hopping into the Q&A too. I'm responding. Okay. I think we're winding down. Thank you to you both for being on our small but mighty information session for the month of November. Again, encourage you to reach out to our team. You can schedule a one-on-one meeting with us to talk about either or both the BB4C consultant resource or the Building Blocks for Change assessment overall. We'd be more than happy to connect with both of you. Thank you.